not studying computer science. And by the way, she'd learned how to type at the age of 50. And she'd written me a letter at school and said she'd gotten a job in England and she couldn't type. And this was in between her and her job. And that say to her, if she didn't learn how to type, in a month she was going to lose that job. And she didn't want her daughter to be in that space. And she insisted that if I wasn't studying computer science, my family was not paying for an education. That's how I ended up studying computer science. And it's fortuitous that I ended up being super good at it, getting scholarships, etc., whatever. But I actually really wanted to be a lawyer. But my mother was thinking about the future of work. The probability of my employability is what she was thinking about at that time. And I guess for her, it was thinking about having a graduate in law who probably might be unemployed for the next 5 years was not something she wanted to deal with in the city of London. She wanted someone who was going to graduate and get out as quickly as possible. And I made it my goal that I was going to do engineering so well just so I could go to my top law school where I'd gotten a place. I ended up not doing that. I enjoyed what I am doing now so much. I enjoyed working on the trading floors across EMEA, doing trading platforms and softwares for traders, and then going into retail banking and now doing what I do. So for me, it was an accident, but it shows you how the nature of work changes and how models of work changed. If I had stayed in Zimbabwe, I think I would have gone to the University of Zimbabwe and studied law, and there was nothing wrong with that. It's just that my mother got more lands in a market that had leapfrogged, and there were other different models to think about and consider. So skills is something that as young people we should really challenge ourselves around and say, are we prepared for this 21st century or for the next 2 decades, given the trends? It's really important that we be authentic with ourselves and say, are we trend worthy? I ask myself this question every morning, and one of the things I really like that has made my work life easy as an executive is Amazon's Alexa. And it's Amazon's Alexa is it's $40. It's a new device I have in my house. It's an AI device. When I wake up in the morning, I say, Alexa, tell me what's on the news. And Alexa tells me what's on the world news. Because I don't have time. My life is very busy, and it's possible that I could miss out on a lot of stuff. And I ask Alexa to tell me if there are any new things in the payments industry. This is before I head out, you know. And if I'm feeling really happy, I'll say, Alexa, play me some morning music. And if I'm feeling super spiritual, I'll say, Alexa, read the Bible. Alexa, pray. And if you know, I feel like I want to find out what the new clothing trends are, I'm like, Alexa, what's the latest clothing trend out there, which is out? My daughter and I fight for Alexa. The first time we had Alexa in the house, she said to me when we were going out shopping, are we not taking Alexa? Because she might tell us 1 or 2 things about the things that are on the shelf. And Alexa has become, we were arguing about whether to get a dog or not. I'm like, I'm not a dog person. Look, I was raised in Zimbabwe. Dogs in the house and stuff like that, I'm not sure. The dog argument has gone out of the window. Alexa's the new 3rd person in our house, and we love her. You know, she makes our lives easier. When I travel, I've set up Alexa with all the Red Riding Hood, snow, whatever. When I'm really tired, honestly, Alexa, read a bedtime story. And Alexa will read a bedtime story. Right. This is alive. And I challenged my team and I said, we took Alexa to the office and I said, I hope in the next year or 2, we can tell Alexa to make an EcoCash payment, and that she can. And we have to think like that, because the world is changing like that. Because today you tell your cards where you want to go, and they tell you via GPRS where you're supposed to go. And soon, I'm sure, with the advent of driverless cars, etc., it will drive itself where it needs to go when service time is near. And it'll go and pick up the child at school, because you will tell the car. Just before I came here, I was running late, but Alexa had told me already that at 1:20 I was supposed to be here, and I got an email saying to me, look, in 20 minutes time, and I had to send on my Google because it's linked to Alexa, make sure that you're heading out, you know, those kinds of things. And it just, for someone who's not good, who likes to be spontaneous like me, And I don't like to be confined. I do need Alexa to remind me about my life. So that is really how life is changing. So this education has to change inherently. Our children, the way that our children are educated, the way they're tech savvy is completely different to, how we approach technology. So we need to think about that in terms of education and how we'll work ready and how we will deliver new jobs. Smart urbanization, I talked about Uber, already. Emirates is one of my favorite. I mean, if you're going to travel on Emirates, you have 24/7 access to Wi-Fi. And I can work. And guys are like, but not. You're supposed to be flying. I'm like, but I'm at work. And the last time I video called guys at work, I'm like, hi guys, when you're in a meeting, join me in and stuff. I wanted to test out this stuff. And they're like, but the wing is making noise. There's so much noise. I'm like, no, but let's just test the concept, what it's like. So this is the changing nature of work. Will I need to be 100% based in my office at my desk? Might I work from whatever and still achieve the same thing? And maybe we don't need an office, and that will go into many other things, etc. Something that we need to think about. But of course, we must remember that the labor markets remain extremely volatile, and that we don't yet have enough trade integration, particularly here in Africa. But might technology change the opportunity that exists across the region for trade integration and create more consistent and communal and amalgamated trade markets in order for us to be able to cross-share resources and drive, our GDP. But I guess maybe as a final and last thought is, parting thoughts is that we'll need to think about the stakeholders who are going to change this. There will be young entrepreneurs and young people like yourselves who will probably innovate around these things to create the new opportunities. There will also be private organizations, private sector organizations such as ourselves and the FANGs and the GAFs that you have looked at, who will change this dynamically. And it will mean that some businesses will no longer exist. I don't know how much longer telecommunications will exist in the advent of, a lot of these changes. Banking, I say that to the bankers all the time. I'm like, take it or leave it, whether or not you like it, I don't know how much longer you'll exist. I think I read something about some local banks that are closing their branches. That was last month. I'm like, we just set up a branchless business. We never had branches from the start. Like, you guys are doing this now? Like 7 years later, after we've been in the market, like, come on now. It's a little slow, because it's just not sustainable, right, anymore. There will also be policymakers, and some of you might end up being policymakers. You have to be cognizant about this. When you have 80% unemployment and you have a 92% wage bill, how do you manage that? Because you cannot afford to continue creating more traditional jobs, but you can create more conventional jobs at much lower cost, hopefully. So these are things you will need to think about as policymakers, and hopefully not sit in grotty government offices talking about creating new traditional jobs, because that will not cut out. It won't cut it out. It won't work. You will not deliver the per capita income that you need for your people. You need to think about doing things much, much differently. One of the arguments we've had at work is whether in manufacturing and stuff, we will still need people, whether we're going to have robots do that for us, and what does it mean? What are the implications for work? Other stakeholders will be development agencies, and to say, where do you put your money? Will you continue to be training government, or are you going to be training young people in terms of education and creating innovation hubs so that our people are future ready? With the demographic dividend that Africa faces, which might, by the way, be a dividend curse. People talk about the resource curse. Africa's problem, if we don't integrate into the changing nature of work, will be the demographic dividend curse. It will become a curse as opposed to leverage, which is what we might want to. So we need to start thinking about those things. And then just finally, World Economic Forum, and I put this on our work platform 3 days ago. And guys were not very happy. World Economic Forum put something out and said the job landscape in 2022, and they said the top emerging jobs will be data analysts and scientists, AI and machine learning specialists, general and operations managers, software application developers and analysts, sales and marketing professionals, big data specialists, digital transformation specialists, new technology specialists, organizational development specialists, information technology services. So my job is still guaranteed for a little bit, right? And then the top 10 declining jobs are going to be data entry clerks. Any accountants in here? Accountants, bookkeeping and payroll clerks, administrative executives and secretaries, assembly and factory workers, client information and customer services workers, business services and administrative managers, auditors, material recording and stock keeping clerks, general and operational managers and postal service clerks. I think here at post office, I'm not really sure if it still exists or what, but look, this is what the dynamic changes are bringing with us, and we have to be cognizant of it, of the changing nature of work. It will further consolidate the economy of one, it will further consolidate the world of one, and it's going to create a new platform for jobs. And that is the next curve that we're going to see. We haven't quite seen it yet, but in my forecasting, and I'm usually not wrong, I believe that is the next sector to be disrupted. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Natalie. You went overboard on time, but you spoke so well that I just had to let you go. Yeah. Right. Thank you very much. I think, you know, as Natalie was speaking, it reminded me of my days as a youth activist. You know, we had a saying, we would always say, you know, whenever two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. But as young people, we made the discovery that even if things go otherwise, and somewhere along the line, should the elephants ever decide to make love, it is still the very same grass that suffers. So the grass has found itself in an unfortunate situation, whether the elephants on top of it are enjoying themselves in a love-making process, or they are enjoying themselves in a fight, the grass suffers. So we would go on and say, this is the predicament that we find ourselves in as young people. Whether the elephants on top of us are making love or they are fighting, we continue to suffer. But I think she gave me a different perspective, which I hope as young people you also got, that we have to go out there and grab the opportunity. Age and being young should never be a hindrance to the opportunities that are there, particularly in the changing world of work. There are opportunities that are being presented by technology. Let us take them up and see how best we can position ourselves. Talking of technology, I'm being told that we have to be tweeting about this event, and these are the hashtags that we have. Hashtag End Poverty, capital letter ENP. Hashtag Africa Can, capital letter ANC. Hashtag It's Possible, capital letter INP. Hashtag World Bank Africa, capital letter W, capital letter B and A. Then hashtag blog for dev, right? I think we'll try to put them up so that people can have access to those hashtags. So without much ado, I think I'll open the space. If there are any reactions, questions to Natalie, in the interest of time, I think we'll try to do that in the next 10 or so minutes. So, okay, we'll start from here. Sorry. Any that side?
All right. So I just have one question, Natalie. Maybe. Oh, okay. My name is Paddington Lundu from Keria, Zimbabwe. One question. From your experience and also how you're seeing the future of work or how we are supposed to progress, where do you fit in the need or the space for career development?
All right, so I will take 2 or 3 rounds, then Natalie can respond. Yeah.
All right. I'm Takozo Mashakwe, and I'm a specialist in climate research and agribusiness. So what I wanted to do is more of an addition to what Natalie said, and it's on fintech. Zimbabwe is in a remarkable place right now because in terms of payment gateways, other countries such as Kenya have over 10 to 15 payment gateways. You have M-Pesa, you have many payment platforms. But in Zimbabwe, we have less than 5. We have EcoCash, we have One Wallet, and it's a knowledge gap. I think it's an opportunity when it comes to job creation, because if we can manage to have startups, more startups when it comes to payment gateways, I think we can make it. We can start to make our own jobs as youth, because you find that in other countries they have a lot, they have quite a number of these fintech organizations. So I just wanted to make that addition.
Okay, Valerie Mandea, representing Rotract. One thing I'd like to note, on a happy note, I think my profession is safe. I'm a marketer, so 2022 I should still be employed. Okay, I'm looking at your Econet, EcoCash, Econet Wireless as a group is traditionally always trend-setting. You're always the first and everyone else is more me too. If I look at the relationship between technology and employment, I see it more, like you said, with EcoCash, but also with Elevate. And when I look at the requirements for being an Elevate representative, a lot of them are, you need to be tech savvy, but you also need to have a lot of soft skills. And in the report, that 150-page report, it spoke about developing, these soft skills. But as Zimbabweans, a lot of the skills that we're learning in schools are not soft skills. So maybe in your experience as a corporate, as an executive or an employer, what would you suggest as the practical steps to perhaps process of building and educating in terms of the soft skills?
I think I can take one more here.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. My name is Faith Mbududu. I'm representing National Association of Youth Organizations. It was an interesting point that was put across by our two presenters, that we have where now how CEOs are now going to be chosen via maybe how they're able to manage WhatsApp groups. If I tell you, for example, in the year 2015, the organization that is under NIO, it started online. And the mobilization was able to acquire 400 women across the nation via online. This is WhatsApp, and I never met most of them up until 2017 in person. So it is something that we should accept that it's happening. And how to collaborate that, as well as the young innovators that have ideas, if they are given that chance to present their ideas, and for their ideas as well to be supported without them being stolen. Because right now we have a lot of young people that I know personally that have brilliant ideas. However, they may not necessarily have the means to register an IP address. So sometimes when they present their ideas to people that have the resources, some of the ideas are stolen. So how safe are we as youths with our ideas and presenting them to those who are able to help us? Thank you.
All right, so I will ask Natalie to respond. Unfortunately, I cannot take an answer. I will give you some time because we have to go about this year.
Okay, I'm going to start bottom up. Thank you, Faith, for sharing your remarks on your own personal experience and complimenting on that. And then you talked about how the youth are going to be safe. I think one of the most important things to realize is that there is infinite resources that are out there, and that it's very important for the youth to be well networked and for the youth not to limit themselves. There is a lot of thinking that goes out there that says, you know, if I don't get my idea to a place like Econet or a place like Old Mutual or whatever, my idea is just not going to take off. But a lot of the scalable value propositions that we have seen, and particularly we see a lot of this in East Africa, is that you talked about having more payment gateways in East Africa. A lot of them didn't start with M-Pesa. A lot of them went standalone. The ability for young people to be able to network, to self-organize, to put together capital, etc., independently of other existing organizations is what's going to push them forward. We cannot afford to limit ourselves. We must take cues from Silicon Valley and the recently replicated Silicon Savannah and what is happening largely in Rwanda. If we look at a business like Facebook that started, you know, in a dormitory room and then moved into a garage and stuff like that. So, I mean, just yesterday we were celebrating the death of Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, and they were giving a timeline of their pictures. Paul and Bill started coding at the age of 15. Can you imagine they came across so many pros, I'm sure, at Berkeley, where they were practicing, who could have stolen their ideas, right? But they got their ideas up there. So I think a lot of it is sometimes nuance and how we are not networking and putting ourselves in more empowered places like innovation hubs, etc., where we have also other stakeholders who can support the work that we're doing. So I'd like to encourage a lot more of that as opposed to fear, right? Creating our own opportunities as opposed to being afraid. And by the way, Zimbabwe is not the only place that you can launch a business. Angry Birds started about 2 years ago, and in 24 days it had 1 million customers. All of these things that we access today on the Apple Store, if you put on your own app on the Apple Store, you market to the world. So I think we want to broaden and become more global and sell ourselves globally, right, as young people, as opposed to fear. In terms of soft skills, I think a lot of networking, things like this that you're doing, sharing knowledge is very, very important. Get together, have networking events. There's very little of them in Zimbabwe. Create them for yourselves. One of the things I often challenge young people about is to break the rules. Break the rules and create the rules that work for yourselves. So in terms of the soft skills, in fact, it starts with the individual. A lot of the personal development, I argue, do for yourself. There are many courses I take here and my employer doesn't pay for. Many places I have to fly to, my employer does not pay for. And you might argue that I am employed, I probably have a job that affords it. By the way, I started doing that while I was in university. I would sacrifice clubbing or buying new pairs of shoes and ensure that I put that in my personal development. It's a habit that I have been practicing for years. So whether or not you tell it you're doing it for me, I'll do it anyway. Whether you provide it or not, I'm going to give myself that chance. So I think in terms of soft skills, there are many repositories, LinkedIn, etc. And I use LinkedIn a lot. In terms of groups, etc., just trying to figure out the trends, etc. So that's one. Career development, one gentleman asked about that. Look, again, I'll say to you, there are no hard and fast rules. It's a green canvas. What I really want to encourage in this room is create your own rules. I challenge my team all the time, particularly where we are, where it's extremely dynamic. The banks are always mad at us because we create our own rules. We change the rules about what we want financial services to be. We show up at banks and banks are like, oh, it doesn't work like that. The standards are not like that. I'm like, there's new standards. That's where we're at. Create the rules about personal development for yourself. Don't wait on an organization. Largely private sector should drive that. But I would really say it starts with the individual. And I'd also like to encourage aid organizations, non-for-profits who are in this area to say provide also the opportunities. Let's rethink the distribution of resources that we are providing in the countries that we serve, and let's see how we can channel them more towards young people around career researching and their personal development, etc. But if no one gives it to you, do it yourself. That is really what I would like to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Natalie. Thank you very much. I think intellectual clarity, fix-it of purpose, and zenith high dexterity as a leader par excellence indeed speaks volumes of the person you are and is an inspiration to the other people in the room. In the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to call upon Kudzai Baiwa. So this is going to be a panel of three. I'll be reading their profiles as they come up front. Chairman. I think the technology is playing up on us, so we'll also call upon Lorraine Adam and Simba Morilo to also come up front. I think they are, in the interest of time, their profiles will be binned as they present. But while they are taking their seats, Kodzi is the co-founder for Investor Science, and she'll be taking us through the topic, the changing nature of work, informality and social inclusion. Simba is the managing director of Oxygen Africa. His talking point will be work and lifelong learning. And Lorraine is the founder and CEO of Trios Health Center and Amaras Health Spa, and she'll be looking beyond poverty, the role of disruptive technology and the future of work. So by the virtue of being the one on my immediate left, you may get the ball rolling. Since we need to connect at 3, and let's try to do 7 minutes a piece here, so that we have more time for interactions, if that works.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. MC. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm the child of 2 teachers. I expect interaction, all right? And I also am a trainer, so I do like to speak and you speak back. So we'll take that once again. Good afternoon, everyone. Brilliant. Now you sound like people have just had a free lunch. So all of the details you need to know are there. The only thing that I've not put up on there is Natalie's company. So I always tell people when I introduce myself that I also do have a phone number, and my same number is not only my mobile number, but it's also my EcoCash number. So Kudzai is my name, and I basically, in one sentence, I do work in financial literacy and digital literacy. We work with micro entrepreneurs, we work with small business owners, we work with creatives, we work with makers, and you know, we also quite keen on the digital world. We do run a space that's also called Eyes on Hub. We're in the center of town, and one of the things that's really exciting that we just started out doing right now is a small community of 3D makers, and I'll speak to that somewhere towards the end. So this afternoon I have exactly 6.5 minutes, I'm sure by now. I'm going to use just 4 minutes to speak on the changing nature of work, informality and social inclusion. A lot of what I would have wanted to say has been said by my good friend Natalie here, so I'll kind of skim over it. But I do want just to highlight a few things around, you know, why it is important, you know, under the hashtag ending poverty, that you and I be cognizant of the changing nature of work, informality and social inclusion. I am going to try and narrow it down to a Zimbabwean scenario and speak really to things that are practical on what we meet and what we see, and perhaps where we should be going, you know, in the time to come. So all protocol observed as I get right into my presentation. Like Natalie, I don't find much energy sitting, so you'll forgive me, I do need to stand. If I had time, I would have wanted to get people to do something. So if I have 30 seconds at the end, I'll ask them to do something. Now, you will take note that from what Natalie has said, that there are very many stories around issues to do with technology. And I love how she concluded with a long list of, you know, perhaps careers that may be disrupted in the future. I'm going to take you by nature. I was educated as a banker. I studied banking at NAST. I did development finance at business school. And I literally just sort of stumbled upon tech. A lot of my tech background had a lot to do with just enthusiasm and just interest in using the opportunity of the internet. And so I think it's important that you and I be aware of the fact that anybody can come from any background in the digital age which we are in, and ensure that whatever it is you're passionate about, you combine that with tech, you combine that with IT, and somehow you can make yourself stay relevant, you know, in the digital age. Now, we do know that we've been, oh, thank you. We are all welcome to the conference. We are cognizant that we've been through several revolutions. If you remember from your people making history, you remember that textbook? Yeah, high school? Anyone? We've been through several revolutions. Some of them included the agricultural one, there was an industrial one, And as we speak right now, it is important that we know that we are living in the time of a present revolution, which is the digital one. And if you remember anything from your history, I do recall that our teacher would speak about how in each revolution, it was underpinned by a certain means of production. In the digital revolution, the means of production, or what we have as a way to be able to produce things, is the internet. And I want to say that perhaps what used to be norms, if I would speak about three things, it used to be the norm that people would become certain workers. So when I grow up, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a nurse, I want to be an accountant. But we do know that there are certain jobs that are present now that were not present 5 or 10 years ago. So some people who are social media managers now did not exist 10 years ago. Some people who are called influencers, I find that quite interesting. Were not present a couple of years back, but they are here now, and they're able to monetize simply by using the opportunity of the internet. It used to be the norm to go to work, but now if I'm to use Shona, literally work comes to us in the digital age, because anybody can work from anywhere. I have a very good friend who has started up one of the startups that's in this nation, and he always would say that, the thing with the internet is, if someone is working behind the internet, you can't quite tell if you're talking to a person or a dog. Really. If you're doing work that is being done from a platform that is the internet and people cannot physically see you, you can literally wear what you want to work. You could be in your pajamas doing the work because the work has come to you. But yet another norm, which is the third and last one, is the fact that, it used to be the norm, to turn up to work, and I'd already begun to speak about this, in a suit. But the future of work can allow you to work in your pajamas, like I said, but I know most Zimbabweans don't own pajamas. Let me just say, in your old t-shirt, isn't it? Okay. The one that says, it's Bo Neshibuku. Now, let me look at just 3 key things, and under each of them I have 3 sub-perspectives. And mine is not so much a talk as it is just to get you to begin to think, because I know in this room we have a whole lot of people coming from different backgrounds. I want to say that from an inclusion perspective, it does sound a lot like the internet is here to solve all of our problems. But one of the things we need to know is that the internet does have the opportunity. It is a platform we can use to solve some difficult and important problems, but it is not a silver bullet. So I want you to just think about some perspectives about what we have in Zimbabwe, what we don't have, and what we need to do. I'm going to just speak about 3 things under each of them. The practicalities for the average Zimbabwean. There are 3 things that we do have in Zimbabwe in relation to the digital age. We are quite fortunate because we have a whole lot of young digital natives. So most Zimbabweans are young people, and most people I believe in this room who are anything between the ages of, Lungan is gone, is it 15 and 35? Youth Council, guys? Yeah, definition of youth is 15 and up to 35 for the African Youth Charter. Anybody who is in that age range in Zimbabwe, really, give them a digital device, they know what to do with it. I have a little girl who's just a little bit over 1.5 years. Pass a phone to her, she knows what to do. It's as if we're just born, isn't it, when it comes to using the digital devices. So we are quite fortunate because there's an opportunity there as a nation because we have a whole lot of young digital natives. And if you combine that with our world-class literacy, the ability to read and write, isn't it? Then we do have something that we could make use of. So once we are in that space, that means we have something that we can count on. Interesting though is that makes all of us be set to be something called a consumer. So the fact that we can use devices and the fact that we are able to read and write sets us up to be consumers. I'll come back to that at the end. So that's something we have. The second thing we have is things that people like Natalie are making available for us. So connectivity. Right now as we speak, most Zimbabweans do have a mobile phone, and they're using broadband, not so much broadband, but let me call it mobile data, if I may call it that. It could be from Econet, it could be from Net1, it could be from Telecel. Most people do have some kind of connection. Not all of us. I think internet penetration is just over 50, almost 51%. But more than half of us literally have some kind of a connection. And that is an opportunity we have. She spoke about WhatsApp. For most Zimbabweans, the only opportunity they've had to interact with the internet. When you say the internet, they actually mean what? They mean WhatsApp, isn't it? For some, it is Facebook. And of course, MNOs have been quite gracious to give us what is called bundles. So we know you can use WhatsApp as a bundle. And that's an opportunity that we have. But once again, let me say this. It sets us up, if we are not careful, to only become consumers. Last but not least, one of the things that we do have, and this is not an exhaustive list, but I just sort of narrowed down the 3 things that I think Zimbabweans do have, is creativity. dear Lord, this nation is creative. Going through anything, people come up with memes, and I know many of you didn't know how to pronounce that. You thought it was memes, isn't it? Okay, so it's memes. You come up with memes, you come up with jokes, you come up with video, etc. Now the question is, from all of those things that you've seen or created, how many of us have been able to monetize? So it's perhaps food for thought. Those are the things that we do have. Here are quickly the 3 things that I feel that we do not have, yet they matter if we are going to have the future of work truly becoming inclusive and working for us in Zimbabwe. So the 3 P's are as follows: power and infrastructure. It would be all fine and good if we said, look, we have the opportunity of the internet. We can enter into the digital world. We can be part of the global world, provided we are actually connected. And for us to be connected, you've got to have devices, which you do have. We do have data, but if that phone is off, there's hardly much that you can do. So power matters. I'm sure my good brother here, Simba, will talk a little bit about power because I know he's in the solar space. The work that he's doing is important because we do need ongoing power if we are going to have a base for where we are going. Now, we do need, and something that we don't have, are people. We have a lot of teachers in Zimbabwe. I come from a teaching family. But, you know, we do need an investment in human capital. There is no point having a connection to the internet, having a device, and you don't know what to do it. So what to do with it, someone has to teach you. And so that's one of the things that we do need. We have what are called MOOCs. Some of you might have heard of MOOCs. You know MOOCs? You know, those online platforms where you can learn, the Coursera's, etc., where you can just go in and do a course. All quite handy. That's a way to be able to learn, but we also do need people to literally instruct people in certain ways, you know, to make us productive as a nation. And that leads me to the last thing, which we don't have. I feel that we do not have as much productivity as we ought to have. Like has already been said, it is important that we then move from a point of small things to scale. And for these things to happen, someone has to teach people to move from where they are to where they ought to be. In terms of productivity as well, we are fixated as a nation, I know, with our offices where we close doors. You literally just took from my presentation. But one thing I will tell you is that co-working is something that is coming into fashion. And I'm going to conclude by speaking to that as I conclude. The last thing I'm going to speak about in the next 3 things, and then I'll bring them together, are the 3 things that I feel are the things that we need to do. So we've said that we know what we have, we know what we don't have, but here, more importantly, the 3 things that we need to do. Understanding what we do have and understanding what we don't have. The next steps for me that matter, if we are going to take advantage of the digital age, if it's going to be socially inclusive, and if we're going to be cognizant of the fact that we're now informal, is to have what I call, number 1, a social contract. So it's the first C. There's got to be a point where we all come together, and she put it as stakeholders, and we're saying that, you know, for there to be social inclusion, government has to come to the table, private sector has to come to the table, and everybody else who's working with anyone who's called a person has to come to the table, and all of us agree that this is the stage where we're at, and we agree on how we can be able to leverage that. And that leads us to the next thing, which is collaboration. Now, one of the things I've noticed in Zimbabwe is that you can do as much programming as you want as private sector or civil sector, but when it comes to scale, depth, and reach, no one beats government. And so we don't have an option, whether we like it or not, but to work together. Unless and until we all come together as a nation, we can talk about how we know so much, how we're able to read and write, how we are technologically apt, but we'll not be able to leverage it for good to make sure that everybody does get some benefit from that. So it is important that when we think about vocational centers in the time to come, it's not just about woodwork and sewing, but begin to think about how technology itself can become a psychomotor activity right here in this nation. May I say that the last thing that we need to be able to do, and I'm going to emphasize on this as I part, is conversion. It doesn't really matter if we've got young people, if we've got technology, if we've got connectivity, if we do not convert all of that to some products that you and I can literally be able to monetize. The bane or the problem that we have sometimes in Africa, and I think I see this a lot in Zimbabwe, is that our interaction with the internet is limited to consumption. So we watch videos, we look at pictures, we read other people's, we learn from other people's platforms, but we ourselves don't go out and create. And there is nothing, please go ahead and clap, thank you. There is nothing that can stop every one of us, because the internet has literally equated it. And you know, companies like hers have made it so easy for us to be able to connect to the rest of the world. Nothing stops us from creating things, putting them on the internet, and also making sure that we monetize, because there are platforms to be able to receive. There's a young man called Paddington. He's here. Paddington, you've written a book, you're selling it to people. Nothing stops you from coming up with a version that you send as a soft phone and you receive your payment through EcoCash. Because those things are available. So for me, the most important thing around ending poverty, around social inclusion, is to begin to take advantage of what we have and convert it. Would you talk to your neighbor for me and say conversion? So in conclusion, let me say that the future is young and digital. The numbers do point to the fact that we have many young people. The numbers show us that we are very well placed in terms of the digital age that we are in. And anybody in any sector can leverage the opportunity of the time. But I'll give you a whole lot of examples of how young people like yourselves are using digital and tourism, digital and agriculture. In many, if you combine what you're doing with digital, you have opportunity to scale. May I also conclude by saying that learn, comrades, learn. It is important that you and I learn. Like Natalie was saying, we've just got to invest in ourselves. Some of us are going to start off as bankers, but the internet is able to allow us to convert our careers, convert our work, make ourselves go out there. And if you know anything you think you know, write about it. Blog on it. There's a platform called Medium. You don't even need to go and write ekuzambaira.com. Go onto Medium, open it up. I look forward to a time in Zimbabwe where I think we can then say when you're all included, it is because you and I are on the internet, not only consuming, but creating. I will end with a 30-second story. Two things. In my family, I have a brother. I come from a family of three children, so I have two siblings. And my brother didn't do very well at A-level, so he got 3 points. That wasn't quite good from 2 subjects. We sat down for a family meeting in the African way and said, how do we proceed with this young man? My parents said we must all put in money, try and take him to a university that could take him with low points. I won't mention which one because I might offend some people. Starts with an A though. So we couldn't raise that amount of money. And then we said, you know what? Let's ask him what his interest is. He said, yeah, I like playing around with computers. So we said, okay, no problem. He went to the Harare Poly and he did a national certificate in, it was an NSC in IT or, yeah, IT, something like that. And then a couple of years later, I think a year or 2 afterwards, he went and did his HND, found a job in a bank, and he would do the night shift because really they were not putting guys like him in the day shift. So he would do the, the midnight version. And what he did was to continue to learn, using the opportunity of the internet. And a couple of years back, and this is where he is now, he's doing better than all of us in the family. All he did was just to leave the country, go to a certain country where they appreciate people who have got digital skills like him. And you know, he set up from a hub in Kigali. There's a hub that's called K-Lab. It's just an innovation center. He got some space there, just a hot desk. After a few weeks in there, they said, you come from Zim, you talk well, come present. So one of these nights, they just asked him to talk about, digital security, which is something he's enthusiastic about. Someone was sitting in there and said, we're looking for someone like you. As we speak right now, that guy is in great demand. I started rethinking my 14 points at A-level. And I'm just trying to make myself fit into, the opportunity of the internet. What I want to just conclude by saying is that the internet is for all of us. And so, please, let's go and invest in ourselves. But last but not least, for those that are parents, let us invest in our children. I have one young son, he's 9. He likes playing games. I say to him, it's good that you're a consumer, but more importantly, be a creator. So every Saturday, this is why I'm not wearing a Brazilian. I pay money so that he goes and learns a coding language called Scratch. And as we speak right now, he can create games, which he can sell. And he is 9. I look forward to being in the same position as Mark Zuckerberg's mother. This future is indeed young and digital. What it can be included through the opportunity of the internet. Thank you very much. I will now receive my round of applause.
All right. I ask Simba to come in. Yeah, never mind the people that are coming out on the screen. They are clamoring to connect with us. We've told them to join the waiting queue. So they will connect at 3. So just ignore them.
No worries. My name is Simba. I'm managing director of a company called Oxygen Africa. What we are is we specialize in commercial rooftop solar. I think my topic today is basically not really on renewable energy, but it's work and lifelong learning. Now, from what my colleagues have said about the changing nature of work, etc., to me, lifelong learning is like evolution. You need it to survive. right? You pretty much do not have a choice. Lifelong learning is like evolution. The reason why is it's a very simple and mundane equation without getting too technical. Companies today need to do more with less resources, and most importantly, less people. So in the case of Natalie, she moves 80% of the country's GDP, but she does it with a team of 30 people. But what she then does is then she creates a new business model where she creates jobs or SMEs by the hundreds or the thousands or the tens of thousands. So that's the nature of work. If you look at Amazon, it's the same thing. The world's biggest online store. But they probably have about 100,000 employees. I don't know how much they have, but it's just a thumbs up. But what have they done? They've created millions of online stores owned by individuals. Right? Now, what does that mean? That means, and I'm not talking from an HR perspective, because in a previous life I was an HR director, whatever degree that you get is only going to be valid for the first 2 years of your working life. That's it. Afterwards, you stand a good chance of being obsolete. If you look at myself, I do energy and people know me for solar, but my training and my background is hotel management. That's my qualification. That's what I'm good at. But now I do renewable energy. I can assess a technical proposal, I can model financially, and I can read my documents just like I'm a lawyer. Maybe I may not understand one or two things, but whenever I send my documents to my legal team, I know exactly what I want, because as a necessity, I can't afford high legal costs. Right? So what does that mean? It means for someone like you, for students like yourselves, the people that are just coming into your careers, right? I like to sum it up in one word: entrepreneurship. Right? So there's entrepreneurship where we start businesses, then there's entrepreneurships whereby you've got people like yourselves that go into companies with the mind of a startup. Right? You're very versatile. You could be in accounts, right? But you need to understand what it means to be in marketing. You need to understand what it means to be in risk, and you need to understand what it means to be in the legal department. You need to be multifaceted, because that's the only way you can probably work in a team like Natalie's. Now, I always like to reference Econet, because in my particular space, they're my major competitor. And even though they're my major competitor, I want to become like Econet, because in dealing with them or encountering Econet wherever we go and we compete for bids, I've discovered one thing. It's a company of entrepreneurs. They think like they own the business, right? Unlike most companies in Zimbabwe, whereby due to the economical situation, you like to be safe. As long as you're within company policy, as long as you keep the regulator happy, you're hoping for a salary at the end of the month, which is a fact. So you discover that's why a lot of banks in our country don't lend to SMEs or to startups, because they just want to be banked safely. That's why when you walk into a KPMG or a Deloitte or a PwC and you're a startup, they most likely won't want to deal with you because they have to charge the hours. Same thing like law firms. But then I ask yourself one question. What happens when tomorrow Zimbabwe is open for business? For argument's sake, we've cleared our arrears and World Bank comes and says, we're going to write Zimbabwe a check for $20 billion, and all of a sudden you have every company under the sun wanting to invest in Zimbabwe, wanting to open up shop. Are we going to make the cut? Have you ever really asked yourself that question? And I will tell you a story where it was very stark and realistic for me. We got a grant from the Africa Development Bank, which is where lifelong learning comes in, right? And in that grant, we're looking for two things. We're looking for a legal firm to do our transaction advisory, and we're looking for a technical firm to do our financial and technical bankability study, right? Now, I've been chasing after the who's in the market, and they didn't want to deal with a startup. But lo and behold, Africa Development Bank then says, no, we've given Simba $1 million. That's $1 million opportunity. All the firms wanted to bid. But here's the thing, it was an international tender. So it's 60 bids from all across the world. Not one Zimbabwean company made it past the first round. Why? Because you're used to your traditional way of doing things. The other companies that made it, which is Norton Rose, was not because they were the biggest law firm in the world, or the third biggest law firm in the world. It's because they understood and they were able to think what a startup like me needs. Now look at it from a macro perspective in each of the careers that you want to do. Someone will walk through your door are you able to be versatile enough to understand what your client needs? And that can only be done if you're always looking to learn new skills, to, as Kuzai said, read the internet in order to create, you know, be versatile, and constantly think to yourself, what are people in the United States, in Europe, in Asia doing? And how can I learn so that as the world becomes a very small, as the world becomes a smaller place, are you relevant? Are you going to survive? And I mean this in every sense of the word. Are you going to survive? So to me, that's what pretty much lifelong learning comes into perspective. We can go on and on until we're blue in the face and talk about, you know, and talk about facts, figures. But I'm looking at a group of people that were where I was a couple of years ago. And the good thing about where we are at this particular age, at this particular stage in time, is you live in a world where information is easy. We lived in a world whenever I wanted to make a phone call, I either had to steal the phone at home or memorize the number on a phone booth. All of you now have cell phones, right? So not only do you have access to free information, but you have time. So learn more than one skill, right? I always tell people the minimum degree that you need, according to me, is a business management degree. Because what a business management degree teaches you is how to run a company, how to manage your finances, and understand what it basically means to make money. So whether you're a doctor, lawyer, whether you work in a bank, those are the fundamentals of what you need to do. So that basically makes you understand why you are part of a larger family. But moving forward, pursue your dreams, try and create new skills, because with changes in technology, new business models crop up, right? That's why you find Mark Zuckerberg can sit in front of a Senate hearing, and the senator asked him, but you provide the service for free. How do you make money? And he quotes and says, we sell ads. And the old guy couldn't understand, like, no, but you don't pay to go onto Facebook. How do you make money? And even if I ask some of you guys, how many of you have actively seen ads on Facebook? You hardly see them because they're hidden, right? Those are new business models that are coming up, right? So sometimes, and I was talking to a colleague of mine whereby they were hammering, I think they were not exactly hammering, but they're criticizing the president's comment when he was at a graduation ceremony and says, create your own jobs. He was absolutely right. Create your own jobs, right? Glenn Stachbury, who was the commercial director of Miko's hospitality when I started off as a trainee, taught me something very important, and I'll tell you this over and over again. Everything that you are in life, you're going to have to take from someone. It's not going to be given to you. You asked about IP. I'm sorry, my job is to take from you. So either you do it quicker than I am, you're more cunning than I am, or you learn to collaborate, or I'm going to bury you. That's it. Because it's my family eats and yours starves. That's just the way of the jungle. Right? So because of that, you need to be aggressive enough to say, look, if you're not going to find work, what are you going to create for yourself? You know? If you see that you're a lawyer, right, are you going to carve out a niche? We're at ILO. And I'll tell you this, as much as people may criticize me, but there's probably very few lawyers in Zimbabwe that I can hire from an energy perspective. But that gives you an opportunity to say, look, let me carve myself an opportunity and be a specialist in energy. So it's lifelong learning. And you don't have to need to be a lawyer. You can be doing something in finance. Another version of, and it goes back to entrepreneurship, and I'll probably say this a bit in closing, is I learned something quite unique. Norton Rose, the CEO, is not a lawyer. He's a businessman. CDC Group, right, which is the Commonwealth Development Company, the investment arm of the UK, the new group CEO is not a banker. He's an entrepreneur. That should tell you something. People are switching the norms. I was at an infrastructure conference just last week, and I learned something quite unique in that one of the top 5 law firms in terms of size, de facto, is actually PwC. But you know PwC as a law firm, right? What does that tell you? They're taking people with different skill set because the world is constantly changing. Business models are constantly changing. Instead of fighting
for the same markets. You have to create new ones. What that means for people in this room is that you're going to have to be versatile, and you're going to have to continuously learn new skills. And the good thing about it is that you're in an age of information. If I knew then or had access to information then that I have now, as I said, I wouldn't have studied hotel management. I would have pretty much studied business management. So as a as my final parting shot, as I said, lifelong learning is a matter of survival. If you're at your age, give yourselves options. Because like I said, if you have your idea, someone's going to take it away from you, and you're going to need a plan B. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. It's always nice to be the last one to speak because everybody has said what you need to say. So I could as well say goodbye and thank you for coming. All right, my name is Lorraine Adam, CEO of Amara's Health Spa and Trio's Health Center. And I'd like to acknowledge this afternoon Moise Karaoke. Thank you very much for inviting me to this to do this presentation. My fellow panelists, you are all too well spoken. I don't think I can say anything after you guys. I feel very limited in what I have to say. But anyway, I'm very happy to be sitting in front of youth and to be able to give you my experiences. There's so many, the topic we're discussing today is quite diverse. There's so many things I'd like to discuss. But most of the stuff I'd have wanted to talk about has already been spoken about. My topic today is looking beyond poverty, the role of disruptive technology, and the future of work. I will not be speaking about the future of work because I'm sure everybody has been speaking to you about the future of work greatly more than I'd ever be able to. So allow me to speak to you about looking beyond poverty and the role of disruptive technology. A short insight into statistics. Poverty. 800 million people around the world are starving, according to the UN statistics. 800 million is a number that's already been halved from about 1 billion from the year 2000, which means a great lot of work has been done. What is happening? We are not eradicating poverty at the rate we should be, because there's certain things we should be doing that we're failing to do. 40% of the food is actually lost because of lack of infrastructure. Let's take, for instance, Africa. In fact, let's come back right here home, Zimbabwe. Our roads. How do we transport maize from the rural areas to the granaries? Half of it is lost doing that. We are busy going onto world platforms to beg for money so we can buy seed. After we've bought the seed, after we've plowed, what do we do with the seed? We're not asking for the correct appliances for us to be able to transport the food, correct? Are we not supposed to then be looking at other options of maybe, because we're losing 40% of our food because of our transportation or our storage facilities? Take, for instance, we had a very nice, this last year, we had our granaries were non-functional, even though we had a bumper harvest. But because we didn't expect to have a bumper harvest, we were now left with a lot of food, but we couldn't store it because we overlooked the fact that there's certain things we need to always have in place, which I don't know if that brings us down to our leadership, right? So maybe we should be looking at creating other ways that can preserve the food. For me, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say the SDGs for us to say poverty eradication should be over by 2030. I think that's even too far. 2025 or even earlier, if we just maybe refocus on what's important. What do we need to do? We're sitting here today with disruptors, correct? What can you design for us to be able to capture that 40%? 40% is a lot. 800 million people around the world. Remember, we're talking about both dysfunctional countries like ours and functional countries like the US. They also have poverty. But in your country, Zimbabwe, we have so many economic problems, but we are also now forgetting that there's more pressing issues like hunger. How can we best use our young people like you that are disruptors to come up with technology that can then curb those problems? We already have people in the industry, in the agricultural sector. I'm talking more about hunger because Zimbabwe has actually got statistics of 76% of starvation out of our whole country. Our population is what, 15 million? 5 million are going through extreme poverty. Extreme, not just poverty, extreme poverty. 5 million is a third of our country. We are here sitting today about the 2% that Mtulu, came in with yesterday. We're here crying about, everyday problems. We have more pressing problems that we're probably not paying enough attention to. I want to challenge the youth in this room today to say, the disruptors, you're all young leaders in your own right, correct? I'm glad we've got the young parliamentarians as well. What policies are you going to put in place so that you are not going to be singing the same old songs and agreeing with everything that's being said by your older generation of people that are ignorant to the real problems this country has? What are you going to be presenting to the parliament when they decide to buy luxurious Land Cruisers, of which 5 of those could actually fix your road from the rural areas, which are most productive, to bring that grain that the whole country needs to feed? I want to challenge the whole, I'm sorry, I'm not even going to say a lot. There's a lot I wanted to say, but I think I need to refocus on Zim, and it's going to be very short. Please, the youth, I'm glad to be talking to you. I myself am a business person, and how disruptive technology has worked for me is that I used to employ auditors, I used to employ accountants. Our systems have evolved in such a way that we're using cloud-based systems now. I don't need to employ people locally. I can work with anybody from around the world depending on what I want. Therefore, you need to now place yourselves to say, okay, I have been getting my degree. All those guys have been talking about education and how it's now going to change your lives moving forward. You're starting to be a lawyer. You're starting to be an accountant. You're starting to be a secretary. Like she was saying, more technology, artificial intelligence. She just has to say to this machine, what am I doing today? What are my appointments and stuff like that? Why does she need a secretary? We don't need that. You need to be forward thinking. We all were brought up in an era where our mothers and fathers decided what was good for us according to what they thought society was right for us. I'm also like Simba. I was born to be an animator. I'm an animator by profession and an architect. I'm so far from that. I worked for ZBC a few short years. In fact, I walked out without a salary. They still owe me a salary because if you remember, the first build was Timina Bonzo, and that was me. And now, I don't know if any of you understand the amount of work that comes with that. And that's tech. And they wanted to put me on a flat $200 salary at the end of the month. But this meant I had to sleep in at work, rendering all these things, and they didn't understand. I don't expect your parents or your grandparents to understand that tech has come and it has come strong, okay? You guys understand that. It's your decision to decide what you're going to do with it. So coming back into eradicating poverty in Zimbabwe, I'll give you an example. Agriculture. You've got chips now that have been created. When you put it into the soil, it can give you a 10-year weather forecast. It can give you the soil formation. This year, you can plant A, B, C, D. Next year, you can't plant this and that. You're expecting the rains at this time of the year. Because of climate change, it's actually very important. You will find that, I'm sure a lot of you with rural areas, your folks are still using the old methods of determining when the rains are coming. And yet climate change has happened and seasons have shifted. Now that kind of technology, you guys could be going back and implementing all the new technology so that we are saving food, we are saving water, we are advancing in technology and creating more work and eradicating poverty, which is one of the SDG goals that we need to reach by 2030. I don't know if I can say anything more, but Thank you for listening to my short speech.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think if we can give another round of applause to our panelists. As Lorraine was presenting, I saw my two friends from the bank, Innocent and Marco, a bit jittery when she spoke about disruptors. It's innovative disruptors, not disruptors in the EFF sense. So just to calm your fears. I think in the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, we are now connecting to our video conference, and as you can see, the other countries have already started. So we invite those who want to stay to stay and connect. But before we connect, I think Fadzi and Cheryl would want to give a small token of appreciation to our panelists. By the way, this came from me, not from the World Bank, just to clarify.
Well, we wanted to give a token of appreciation to our panelists. Thank you so much for spending a part of your day with us. So unfortunately, we don't have much time to have another round of questions. So we would ask that these guys are all on Twitter, so feel free to blow up their handles and ask them some questions that would come up afterwards. And then also, please indulge me, I wanted to ask for a group picture, which would have to be very, very fast. So it would be, after this, we go to the steps, we take a picture, then we come back for the next session. All right, so maybe we can do it after. All right, for those who still be here, can we take the picture afterwards to share with our other country officers? Thank you for coming.
Just to say that because it's already started in the other countries, this is our Vice President, Hafez Ghanem, who's kicking off the discussion. He's in Zambia for a visit. So we'll just connect and at least hear the introduction before we miss out too much.
So, we had actually more people left in the house than more than 20 years ago. Obviously, this is not an acceptable trend. This is not something